All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts. His acts being 7 ages. First, the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. And then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face creeping like snail, unwillingly to school. And then the lover sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to his mistress' eyebrow. And then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard.
Jealous in honour, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair round belly with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacle on nose and pouch on side. His youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big and manly voice turning again towards childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion, sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything. Welcome to acting Shakespeare. I've been acting very happily in the plays of Shakespeare over the last 20 years or so now, in London, where I live, and also on tour in Great Britain. I've worked for the Royal Shakespeare Company at their theatre in London, the Aldwych Theatre, and also their 2 theatres in Stratford-upon-Avon, where William Shakespeare was born in 1564, when the first Elizabeth was Queen of England. And right at the centre of her nation runs the River Avon, and on the banks of the Avon, the little market town of Stratford. If you've ever been there, you probably visited the parish church where Shakespeare is buried. Do you remember what it says on the gravestone? Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man who spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. Well, William, there was someone who tried to dig up your dust. It was an American academic who wanted to prove that the grave was empty and that Shakespeare's plays had really been written by his contemporary, the playwright Christopher Marlowe. That attempt failed. Other people think that Francis Bacon wrote the plays. Sort of intellectual snobs and social snobs think it was the Earl of Oxford. But the more I act in Shakespeare's plays, the more that I see them, the more convinced I become that the real Shakespeare is buried in Stratford, and that the man who wrote the plays was a true man of the theatre, and it's as such that I want to celebrate him with you now. And so, with your help, I want to share this spare stage with some of his characters and summon up the spirits of his kings and drunkards, princes, lovers, murderers and magicians, and always there will be actors on a bare stage in praise of a man of the theatre acting Shakespeare. The first Shakespeare play I ever saw was when I was 8 years old in the north of England, where I was born and brought up. Oh, excuse me, William, is it all right if I share this with you? The play was Macbeth, and I don't remember anything about the production, but something must have struck me with excitement, because increasingly during my childhood, my life seemed to have been full of Shakespeare. I saw John Gielgud play Prospero, and King Lear. I'll never forget his entrance with Cordelia, his dead daughter, in his arms. Howl, 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 howl. I think there were 5 or 6 howls there. I saw Laurence Olivier as Malvolio and Coriolanus, and one Christmas I was given a little toy theatre in my stocking, and after lunch that same day I'd cut it all out and I presented an hour-long version of Hamlet, doing all the voices. there was a cardboard Sir Lawrence and a diminutive Gene Simmons, you know. I was frankly stage-struck. I acted at school, of course. The last part I played there was Shakespeare's King Henry V. And time came to try and get into university, and it was a great relief to me to discover that my passion, my hobby of theatre was academically respectable. So when I went up to Cambridge, and that's the university I wanted to get into, my mind was full of Shakespeare and plays. And I went up there one November day in my school tie and blazer and shining morning face, and I met my first Cambridge Don. He was a very tall Anglo-Irish ex-brigadier of the British Army, full of strange oaths, and he had the most amazing limp I've ever seen, something like this. I assumed this was a result of some distinguished war wound. Not at all. He got it falling down his staircase drunk one night. Anyway, there we sat in the little study, frightened schoolboy, Don and Leg, and he said to me, "I hear you are an actor." Yes, sir. "I don't like actors." No, sir. "Have you acted any Shakespeare?" Yes, sir, I played King Henry V. "Do me a speech." "Now, sir." "Yes." And so, investing the young, brave King Henry going into battle with my own determination to win my own private battle of getting into Cambridge University, I leapt into the saddle and I exhorted the limping brigadier to follow me once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more, or close the wall up with our English dead. In peace, there's nothing so becomes a man as modest stillness and humility, but when the blast of war blows in our ears, then imitate the action of the tiger, stiffen the sinews, summon up the blood, disguise fair nature with hard-favoured rage. Then lend the eye a terrible aspect, let it pry through the portage of the head like the brass cannon, let the brow o'erwhelm it as fearfully as doth the galled rock, or hang and jutty his confounded base, swilled with the wild and wasteful ocean. Now, set the teeth, and stretch the nostril wide, hold hard the breath, and bend up every spirit to his full height. On, you noblest English, whose blood is fet from fathers of war-proof, fathers that, like so many Alexanders, have in these parts, from morn till even fought, and sheathed your swords for lack of argument. Dishonour not your mothers. Now attest that those whom you called fathers did beget you. Be copy now to men of grosser blood, and teach them how to war. And you, good yeoman, whose limbs were made in England, show us here the mettle of your pasture. Let us swear that you are worth your breeding, which I doubt not. For there is none of you so mean and base that hath not noble lustre in your eyes. I see you stand like greyhounds in the slips, straining upon the start. The game's afoot. Follow your spirit, and upon this charge cry, God for Harry, England, and St. George! And he let me into Cambridge, and I stayed there for 3 years. So, if it was Shakespeare that got me into Cambridge, it was Cambridge that got me into the professional theatre, because while I was pretending to study English literature there for 3 years, I was also acting in 21 different undergraduate productions. I wasn't the only undergraduate who hoped to become a professional. Derek Jacobi was there at the same time. He played all the juvenile parts, you know, all straight back and orange hair. And there was Peter Cook and David Frost, who did all the funny voices. And the old men were usually played by me and by Trevor Nunn, who later became the director of the Royal Shakespeare Company. So now you know how I happened to work at Stratford. It's called the Cambridge Mafia. But how did Shakespeare get into the professional theatre? Did he go to university? We don't know. Did he go to school? We don't know for certain. We don't actually know when he was born. We don't actually know what he would look like. There's no contemporary portrait. We don't actually know where he was born, although that official birthplace that 500,000 people tour through each year was owned for a time by his father, John. And there's a clue, I think, to Shakespeare's first contact with the theatre, because John Shakespeare was bailiff or constable of Stratford-upon-Avon, and part of his official duties was to welcome civic visitors to the town, such as the professional actors who toured through Stratford when they had to leave their theatres in London during the plague months. And these were not just rogues and vagabonds, peasant slaves. These were fine and famous actors who had played before the Queen of England herself. So imagine the scene as they arrived in Stratford, preceded by the town crier, "The best actors in the world!" Setting up their little stage inside the Guildhall, which still stands at Stratford, or outside maybe, supervised by John Shakespeare and watched by young William, his eyes and ears wide open. Magic words from actors on a bare stage, and then maybe afterwards meeting the actors with his father, longing to run away to London with them to change his life and ours forever. Actors toured through Elsinore, too, as old Polonius tells young Prince Hamlet. "My lord, I have news to tell you. The actors are come hither. The best actors in the world, either for tragedy, comedy, history, pastoral comical, historical pastoral, tragical historical, tragical comical historical pastoral, scene individable and poem unlimited. Seneca cannot be too heavy, nor Plautus too light. For the law of writ and the liberty, these are the only men." You are welcome, masters. Welcome all. We'll into it like French falconers, fly at anything we see. Come, give us a taste of your quality. Come, a passionate speech. I heard thee speak me a speech once. 'Twas Aeneas' tale to Dido, and thereabout of it especially, where he speaks of Priam's slaughter. If it live in your memory, begin at this line. "The rugged Pyrrhus, like the Hyrcanian beast." No, it's not so. It begins with Pyrrhus. Let me see. "The rugged Pyrrhus, he whose sable arm, black as his purpose, did the knight resemble when he lay couched in the ominous horse, hath now this dread and black complexion smeared with heraldry more dismal. Head to foot now is he total gules. The hellish Pyrrhus, old grandsire Priam, seeks." So, proceed you. "Anon he finds him, striking too short at Greeks his antique sword, rebellious to his arm lies where it falls, repugnant to command. Pyrrhus at Priam drives, in rage, strikes wide, and with the whiff and wind of his fell sword, the unnerved father falls. Then senseless Ilium, seeming to feel this blow, with flaming top stoops to his base, and with a hideous crash takes prisoner Pyrrhus' ear. For lo, his sword, which was declining on the milky head of reverend Priam, seemed in the air to stick. So, as a painted tyrant Pyrrhus stood, did nothing. Then after Pyrrhus' pause, aroused vengeance set sinew work, and never did the Cyclops' hammer fall on Mars' armor, forged for proof return, with less remorse than Pyrrhus' bleeding sword now falls on Priam. But who had seen the mobled queen run barefoot up and down, threatening the flames with bison rheum, a clout upon that head where late the diadem stood, and for a robe about her lank and all o'er-teemed loins, a blanket, in the alarm of fear caught up, who had this seen? With tongue in venom steeped, 'gainst fortune's state would treason have pronounced. But if the gods themselves did see her then, when she saw Pyrrhus make malicious sport in mincing with his sword her husband's limbs, the instant burst of clamor that she made, unless things mortal move them not at all, would have made milch the burning eyes of heaven and passion in the gods. Look where he has not turned his color and has tears in his eyes. Prithee, no more. 'Tis well. We'll have thee speak out the rest soon. My lord, let the players be well bestowed. Do you hear? Let them be well used, for they are the abstracts and brief chronicles of the time. After your death, you were better have a bad epitaph than their ill report while you live. Follow that lord, and look you, mock him not. You're welcome to Elsinore. Aye, sir. God be with you. Now I am alone. Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. Is it not monstrous that this player here, but in a fiction, in a dream of passion, could force his soul so to his own conceit that from her working all his visage wanned, tears in his eyes, distraction in his aspect, a broken voice, and his whole function suiting with forms to his conceit, and all for nothing, for Hecuba. What's Hecuba to him, or he to Hecuba, that he should weep for her? What would he do had he the motive and the cue for passion that I have? He would drown the stage with tears, and cleave the general ear with horrid speech, make mad the guilty, and appall the free, confound the ignorant, and amaze indeed the very faculties of eyes and ears. But I, a dull and muddy metals rascal, peak like John dreams, unpregnant of my cause and consent nothing. No. Not for a king upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made. Am I a coward? Who calls me villain? Breaks my pate across, tweaks me by the nose, gives me the lie in the throat, as deep as to the lungs. Who does me this? Swoops, I should take it. For it cannot be but I am pigeon-livered and lack the gall to make oppression bitter, or ere this I should have fatted all the region kites with this slave's offal. Bloody boarded villain, remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain, go vengeance! Oh, what an ass am I. Oh, this is most brave. That I, the son of a dear father, murdered, prompted to my revenge by heaven and hell, must like a whore unpack my heart with words and fall a cursing like a very drab, a scullion. Fire about my brain. I have heard that guilty creatures sitting at a play have by the very cunning of the scene been struck so to the soul that presently they have proclaimed their malefactions. For murder, though it hath no tongue, will speak. With most miraculous organ, I'll have these players play something like the murder of my father before my uncle. I'll observe him to the quick. If he do blench, I know my course. This spirit that I have seen may be the devil, and the devil hath power to assume a pleasing shape, yea, and perhaps out of my weakness and my melancholy, as he is very potent with such spirits, abuses me to damn me. I have grounds more relative than this. The play is the thing, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. And so Hamlet writes in some 12 or 16 lines into the actor's play, which was called The Murder of Gonzaga. He even gives it a new title. He called it The Mousetrap. And then 350 years later, Agatha Christie pinched that title for her own murder thriller. Anyway, that does ensure that if Shakespeare didn't write the longest-running play in the history of world theatre, at least he wrote the title. There was a tourist in London recently waiting in the rain to get a taxi, which is how most of us spend our summers in London. But he had a ticket for The Mousetrap in his pocket, and he was cursing English weather and English plumbing and English cab drivers when one of them stopped and into the cab he got, and all through the journey he was cursing English weather, English plumbing and English cab driving. And when he got to the theatre, he paid off the cabbie but didn't leave a tip. And as he got into the foyer of the theatre, the taxi driver wound down the window and shouted after him, "The detective did it!" Well, and if you believe that, you believe anything. It's obvious that some of you have seen The Mousetrap, and if you haven't, you needn't bother now. Well, 350 years before, in Stratford-upon-Avon, there were not only professional actors, there were amateur actors too. A little troupe of them was led by David Jones, who was William Shakespeare's cousin by marriage. They used to do performances on high days and holidays for the local dignitaries. And I wonder, William, if you ever acted with David Jones. One of those unanswerable questions. Certainly he wrote about such a group of actors, and if they were preparing to do a performance for their local aristocrat who was the Duke of Athens, and if their play was the classical story of Pyramus and Thisbe, I think we can recognize English workmen when we see them, and who can blame the leading man, Bully Bottom, if after a hard day's work in the weaver's shop he should fall asleep during the evening rehearsal and dream that he's entered fairyland and fallen in love with the queen of the fairies herself, Titania, with a donkey's head on top of his own. And now he wakes from his magical midsummer night's dream. When my cue comes, call me and I will answer. My next is most fair Pyramus. Peter Quince, Flute the bellows mender, Snout the tinker, Starveling! God's my life, stolen ensign left me asleep. I've had a most rare vision. I've had a dream. Past the wit of man to say what dream it was. Man is but an ass if he go about to expound this dream. Methought I was. There's no man can tell what. No, methought I was, and methought I had. Oh, God. Man is but a patched fool if he offer to say what methought I had. The eye of man hath not heard. The ear of man hath not seen. Man's hand is not able to taste, his tongue to conceive, nor his heart to report what my dream was. I'll get Peter Quince to write a ballad of this dream, and it shall be called Bottom's Dream, because it hath no bottom. And I will sing it in the latter end of a play before the Duke. Peradventure, to make it the more gracious, I will sing it at her death. Where be these lads? Where be these hearts? Masters, I am to discourse wonders, yet ask me not what for. If I tell you I am no true Athenian, yet I will tell you everything right as it fell out. No, not a word from me. All I will say is that the Duke hath dined. Get your apparel together, good strings to your beards, new ribbons to your pumps. Meet presently at the palace, every man look over his part. For the short and the long is our play is preferred. In any case, let Thisbe have clean linen. And let not him that plays the lion pare his nails, for they shall hang out for the lion's claws. And most dear actors, eat no onions nor garlic. For we are to utter sweet breath, and I do not doubt but to hear them say it's a sweet comedy. No more words, away. Go away! Thank you. And then when he was in his early 20s, Shakespeare left Stratford. Why did you leave Anne, your wife, and your daughter and baby twins? Was it not a happy marriage? All I can tell you is that nowhere in the 37 plays is there a single happy marriage. Can you think of one? Oh, can you? Petruchio and his shrew Kate, perhaps? The Macbeths? Well, Shakespeare would not be the first man of the theatre to say to his family, there is a world elsewhere. There's my acting, there's my writing, and there is London, where Richard Burbage had his company of players, eventually to have their own theatre, the Globe, on the unfashionable south bank of London, right opposite St. Paul's Cathedral, surrounded by bear-baiting pits, cockpits, brothels, and the screams of animals and the shouts of men and women floating up through the London air, in through the open roof of the round, circular Globe Theatre. Simple wooden structure holding maybe as many as 2,000 people in tiers around the stage, some of them standing up, pushed up against the front of the stage. Hardly any scenery, the barest of costumes, and no artificial lighting. And under those conditions, an actor might be tempted to overact because all the focus of attention is on him and on the words he speaks. The actors must persuade the audience to listen, to be an audience, and not be spectators who just watch. The audience must use their imagination, and use yours now as you picture the Globe Theatre empty, except for the actors who have just finished a final run-through of a play and are gathered around the front of the stage waiting for the final notes of advice from the author or director, as actors still do to this day. Speak the speech, I pray you, as I pronounced it to you. Drippingly upon the tongue. That if you mouth it, as many of our players do, I had as lief the town crier spoke my lines. Nor do not saw the air too much with your hand, thus. Use all gently, for in the very torrent, tempest, and, as I may say, whirlwind of your passion, you must acquire and beget a temperance that may give it smoothness. Oh, it offends me to the soul to hear a robustious, periwig-pated fellow tear a passion to tatters, to very rags, to split the ears of the groundlings, who for the most part are capable of nothing but inexplicable dumb shows and noise. I would have such a fellow whipped for or doing termagant it out Herod's Herod. Pray you avoid it. Be not too tame, neither. But let your own discretion be your tutor. Suit the action to the word. The word to the action, with this special observance. That you o'erstep not the modesty of nature, for anything so overdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both at first and now, was and is to hold as 'twere the mirror up to nature, to show virtue her own feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time, his own form and pressure. Off you go, break a leg, see you later. And the actors go to prepare, and the audience arrives to prepare for the first performance of, let's say, Shakespeare's Life of King Henry V. Enter the chorus, played perhaps on this occasion by the author himself. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars. And at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment, but pardon, gentles all, the flat, unrazed spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casques that did affright the air at Agincourt? Oh, pardon, gentles, since a crooked figure may attest in little place 1,000,000, and let us, ciphers to this great account, on your imaginary forces work. Suppose within the girdle of these walls are now confined 2 mighty monarchies, whose high upreared and abutting fronts the perilous narrow ocean parts asunder. Piece out our imperfections with your thoughts, into 1,000 parts divide one man, and make imaginary puissance. Think, when we talk of horses, that you see them printing their proud hoofs in the receiving earth. For 'tis your thoughts that now must deck our kings, carry them here and there, jumping o'er time, turning the accomplishment of many years into an hourglass. For the which supply, admit me, chorus to this history, who, prologue-like, your humble patience pray, gently to hear, kindly to judge our play. Shakespeare's first great smash hit was a play about King Henry V's son, King Henry VI of England, and so successful was it that he had to write 2 sequels. And striding through the 3 plays is his first great character, an ambitious, self-regarding politician who will stop at nothing and no one to achieve his ends, a man who will eventually rival Stalin or Hitler with his tyranny. But because, like all Shakespeare's villains and like all his heroes, he talks directly to the audience, because he confesses to you his deepest desires, because he makes you smile and laugh, you begin to sympathize with him, even to like him. As the young Duke of Gloucester confesses to you that he is miscast by nature and would like to play the star role of King Richard III. Well, say there is no kingdom, then, for Richard, what other pleasure can the world afford? I'll make my heaven in a lady's lap and deck my body with gay ornaments to witch sweet ladies with my words and looks. A monstrous fault, and more unlikely than to accomplish 20 golden crowns. Why? Love forswore me in my mother's womb, and for I should not deal in her soft laws, she did corrupt frail nature with some bribe to shrink my arm up like a withered shrub, to make an envious mountain on my back where sits deformity to mock my body, to shape my legs of an unequal size, and disproportion me in every part, like to a chaos or an unlicked bare whelp that carries no impression like the dam. And am I then a man to be beloved? Oh, monstrous fault to harbor such a thought. And since the world affords no joy to me but to command, to check, to o'erbear such as are a better person than myself, I'll make my heaven to dream upon the crown, and whiles I live to account this world a hell, until my misshaped trunk that bears this head be round impaled with a glorious crown. And yet I know not how to get the crown, for many lives stand between me and home, and I, like one lost in a thorny wood that rents the thorns and is rent with the thorns, seeking the way, yet straying from the way, not knowing how to find the open air, torment myself to catch the English crown. And from that torment I will free myself, or hew my way out with a bloody axe. Why, I can smile and murder whiles I smile, and cry content to that which grieves my heart, and wet my cheeks with artificial tears, and frame my face to all occasions. I'll drown more sailors than the mermaid shall. I'll slay more gazers than the basilisk. I'll play the orator as well as Nestor, deceive more slyly than Ulysses could, and like a Sinon take another Troy. I can add colors to the chameleon, change shapes with Proteus to advantages, and set the murderous Machiavel to school. Can I do this and cannot get a crown? Were it further off, I'll pluck it down. It's difficult to forget Laurence Olivier, isn't it? It's the trouble about playing these great parts is that somebody always got there before you. When I was playing Hamlet, there had been 10 other Hamlets that season in London. And I sympathize with the Cambridge Don who once said to me, I never want to see Twelfth Night again unless it's done by archangels. Richard Burbage was the luckiest actor of all because he was the first Hamlet, the first Henry V, the first Coriolanus, the first Othello, can you imagine it? And the first Richard III. There's a little bit of gossip that's come down to us about Burbage and about Shakespeare, which I hope is true. It's recorded in a diary of 1602. When Richard Burbage played Richard III, there was a certain citizen grew so far in liking with him that before she went from the play, she appointed him to come that night unto her by the name of Richard III. Shakespeare, overhearing their conclusion, went before, was entertained and at his game before Burbage came. Then word being brought that Richard III was at the door, Shakespeare caused return to be made that William the Conqueror was before Richard III. Oh, I do hope that's true. Let's go back to King Henry V when he was still young Prince of Wales. Prince Hal, playing in the East End of London with his friends Bardolph, Peto, Poins, and Sir John Falstaff. Playing in the sense of playing around, and in this scene in the sense of play acting, as Falstaff and Hal take it in turns to play Hal's father, the king. Do thou stand for my father and examine me on the particulars of my life.
Shall I? Content, this chair shall be my state, this dagger my scepter, and this cushion shall be my crown. And give me a cup of sack to make mine eyes look red, that it may be thought that I have wept, for now I must speak in passion, and I will do it in King Cambyses' vein. Now, Harry, I not only marvel where thou spendest thy time, I also marvel how thou art accompanied. Shall the son of England prove a thief, and take purses a question to be asked? There's a thing, Harry, which thou hast often heard of, and it is known to many in our land by the name of pitch. This pitch, as ancient writers do report, doth defile, so doth the company thou keepest. And yet, Harry, there is a virtuous man whom I've often noted in thy company, and yet I know not his name. A goodly, portly man, i'faith, and a corpulent, of a cheerful look, a pleasing eye, and a most noble carriage. And as I think his age some 50, or by Our Lady inclining to 60, and now I remember me, his name is Falstaff. If that man be lewdly given, he deceiveth me, for Harry I spy virtue in his looks. Him keep with, the rest banish. And now tell me, thou naughty varlet, tell me where'st thou been this month?
Dost thou speak like a king? Do thou stand for me, and I'll play my father. Now, Harry, the complaints I hear of thee are grievous. Thou art violently carried away from grace. There is a devil haunts thee in the likeness of a fat old man. A ton of man is thy companion. Why dost thou converse with that trunk of humours, that bolting hutch of beastliness, that swollen parcel of dropsies, that huge bombard of sack, that stuffed cloak bag of guts, that roasted Manning tree ox with the pudding in his belly, that reverend vice, that grey iniquity, that father ruffian, that vanity in years, wherein is he good but to taste sack and drink it? Wherein neat and cleanly but to cut a capon and eat it? Wherein cunning but in craft? Wherein crafty but in villainy? Wherein villainous but in all things? Wherein worthy but in nothing? That old abominable misleader of youth, Falstaff, that old white-bearded Satan,
my lord. The man I know, but to say that I know more harm in him than in myself were to say more than I know. That he is old, the more the pity his white hairs do witness it. But that he is, saving your reverence, a whore, master, that I utterly deny. If sugar and sack be a fault, God help the wicked. If to be old and merry be a sin, many an old host I know is to be damned. If to be fat be to be hated, why then Pharaoh's lean kine are to be loved. No, my good lord, banish Bardolph, banish Peto, banish Poins, but kind Jack Falstaff, true Jack Falstaff, sweet Jack Falstaff, valiant Jack Falstaff, and the more valiant being as he is old Jack Falstaff, banish not him thy head is company, banish not him thy head is company. Banish plump Jack, and banish all the world.
I do. I will. And true to his word, when Hal becomes King Henry V, he does banish Falstaff from his sight, and the old fat knight declines and dies, as his dear friend Mrs. Quickly tells you. Now, sure, he's not in hell, he's in Arthur's bosom, if ever a man went to Arthur's bosom. He made a finer end and went away, and he'd been any Christian child. He parted even just between 12 and 1, even at the turning of the tide. For after I saw him fumble with the sheets and play with flowers and smile at his fingers' ends, I knew there was but one way. For his nose was as sharp as a pen, and he babbled of green fields. And now, Sir John, quoth I, what man be of good cheer? Now he cried out, God, 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 3 or 4 times. I, to comfort him, bade him he shouldn't think of God. I hope there was no need to trouble himself with any such thoughts yet. And he bade me put more clothes on his feet. I put my hand into the bed and felt them, and they were as cold as any stone. And I felt to his knees. And so upward and upward. And all was as cold as any stone. Of course, Mrs. Quickly was written to be played by a man because Shakespeare worked in a theatre where there were no actresses, just men and boys. And what lad unparalleled was it who was first given the responsibility of playing Viola, Imogen, Rosalind? It's no wonder those girls get into breeches as soon as possible, is it, and walk through the plays as boys. But that still leaves the undisguised femininity of Cleopatra, Lady Macbeth, Juliet. Boy actors to wonder at. And here is Shakespeare's 20th sonnet. Not easy, perhaps, to understand at first reading, but when heard out loud, it becomes, I think, like all Shakespeare's sonnets, a little heartfelt speech. A woman's face with nature's own hand painted hast thou, the master mistress of my passion. A woman's gentle heart, but not acquainted with shifting change as is false women's fashion. An eye more bright than theirs, less false in rolling, gilding the object whereupon it gazeth. A man in hue, all hues in his controlling, that steals men's eyes, and women's souls amazeth. And for a woman wert thou first created, till nature as she wrought thee fell a doting, and by addition me of thee defeated, by adding one thing to my purpose, nothing. But since she pricked thee out for women's pleasure, mine be thy love, and thy love's use their treasure. And so to Shakespeare's first indisputable masterpiece, a play like the sonnets, full of love, full of wit, full of imagery, full of easy rhythms and rhymes. A playwright in love with the English language. And Romeo and Juliet, too, are in love with words. They're great talkers. When I played Romeo, we discovered at Stratford that Romeo and Juliet are on stage together for only 14 minutes out of the 2 hours traffic of their stage. Of course, they never stop talking about each other. Because they're working in a theatre where there's no artificial light, their words must describe the light, the moonlight, the starlight, the sunlight, the lamplights, lanterns, candles. And colours, too. The black of night, the white of dear Juliet's hand, the crimson of her lips, her cheeks, and the blood. Blood. This is a play about death as much as it is a play about life. And they meet in The Lovers because on Romeo's first entrance into the play, he's thinking and feeling that death is in the air. And he almost knows that after his first ecstatic meeting with Juliet and their secret marriage and his banishment and his return, that he will commit suicide. Life and death meet in one word in the play. It's a play full of puns, and here's a double meaning that it's easy to miss these days. The verb to die means not only to expire, to end life, but for the Elizabethans it had the other meaning of achieving a sexual climax, the very pinnacle of life. And so, 2 households, both alike in dignity, in fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood make civil hands unclean. From forth the fatal loins of these 2 foes, a pair of star-crossed lovers take their life, whose misadventured, piteous overthrow do with their deaths bury their parents' strife. I dreamt a dream tonight. My mind misgives some consequence, yet hanging in the stars, shall bitterly begin his fearful date with this night's revels and expire the term of a despised life closed in my breast with some vile forfeit of untimely death. But he that hath the steerage of my course direct my sail. She doth teach the torches to burn bright. It seems she hangs upon the cheek of night as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear, beauty too rich for use, for earth too dear. So shows a snowy dove trooping with crows, as yonder lady o'er her fellows shows. Did my heart love till now? Forswear its sight, for I ne'er saw true beauty till this night. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who's already sick and pale with grief that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady. Oh, it is my love. Oh, that she knew she were. See how she leans her cheek upon her hand. Oh, that I were a glove upon that hand, that I might touch that cheek. She speaks. Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet. 'Tis but thy name which is mine enemy. Thou art thyself, though not a Montague. What's Montague? It is nor hand, nor foot, nor face, nor arm, nor any other part belonging to a man. Oh, be some other name. What's in a name? That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owns without that title. Romeo, doff thy name, and for thy name, which is no part of thee, take all myself. Gallop apace, you fiery-footed steeds, toward Phoebus' lodging. Such a wagoner as Phaeton would whip you to the west and bring in cloudy night immediately. Spread thy close curtain, love-performing night, that runaways' eyes may wink, and Romeo leap into these arms untalked of and unseen. Come, night. Come, Romeo. Come thou day and night, for thou wilt lie upon the wings of night, whiter than new snow on a raven's back. Come, gentle night, come, loving black
browed night, give me my Romeo, and when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with night and pay no worship to the garish sun. These violent delights have violent ends, which in their triumph die like fire and powder, which as they kiss consume. Hence from Verona art thou banished, be patient, for the world is broad and wide. There is no world without Verona walls but purgatory, torture, hell itself. Heaven is here where Juliet lives, and every cat and dog and little mouse, every unworthy thing live here in heaven and may look on her, but Romeo may not. More validity, more honourable state, more courtship live in carrion flies than Romeo. They may seize on the white wonder of dear Juliet's hand and steal immortal blessing from her lips. This may flies do. When I from this must fly, and say'st thou yet that exile is not death? Hadst thou no poison mix, no sharp ground knife, no sudden mean of death, though ne'er so mean, but banished to kill me. Banished? Thou couldst not speak of what thou dost not feel. Wert thou as young as I, Juliet thy love, an hour but married, Tybalt's murderer doting like me, and like me banished, then mightst thou speak, then mightst thou tear thy hair and fall upon the ground, as I do now, taking the measure of an unmade grave. A grave. Oh no, a lantern. For here lies Juliet, and her beauty makes this vault a feasting presence, full of light. How oft when men are at the point of death have they been merry, which their keepers call a lightning before death. Oh, how may I call this a lightning? Oh, my love. My wife, death that hath sucked the honey of thy breath hath had no power yet upon thy beauty. Thou art not conquered. Beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks, and death's pale flag is not advanced there. Oh, Juliet, why art thou yet so fair? Shall I believe that insubstantial death is amorous, and that the lean, abhorred monster keeps thee here in dark to be his paramour? For fear of that I still will stay with thee, and never from this palace of dim night depart again. Here will I remain with worms that are thy chambermaids. Here will I set up my everlasting rest, and shake the yoke of inauspicious stars from this world-wearied flesh. Eyes, look your last. Arms, take your last embrace. And lips, oh, you the doors of breath, seal with a righteous kiss a dateless bargain to engrossing death. Come, bitter conduct, come, unsavory guide. Thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks thy seasick, weary bark. Here's to my love. True apothecary, thy drugs are quick. Thus, with a kiss, I die. The glooming peace this morning with it brings, the sun for sorrow will not show his head. Go hence to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned and some punished, for never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo.
I'm glad you found bits of Romeo and Juliet amusing. When I played Romeo at Stratford-upon-Avon, we used to get about 24 laughs during the balcony scene. No, but they were intentional laughs on our part. There are all sorts of unsuspected laughs in Shakespeare, and I think you've got to be a bit of a comedian to get away with Hamlet. I even got some laughs in Macbeth. Just 40 years after Shakespeare died, there was a very keen theatre-goer keeping a diary. And that diary has fixed some actors' performances. And here it is, an extract from it. Mr. Samuel Pepys. To the King's Theatre, and there saw Taming of the Shrew, which hath some very good pieces in it, but generally is but a mean play, by reason of the words, I suppose, not being understood, at least by me. To the opera, and there saw Romeo and Juliet, which is a play of itself the worst I ever heard in my life, and the worst acted that I ever saw these people do. To the Duke's house, and there saw A Midsummer Night's Dream, which I had never seen before, nor shall ever again. But to be fair to Shakespeare and to Pepys, probably the version of the dream that he was seeing was called The Fairy Queen. It was by Thomas Betterton and had music by Henry Purcell. You see, even as early as 40 years after Shakespeare's death, theatre people were using Shakespeare for their own purposes, which has continued ever since. Although Shakespeare is for all time, he is for all time because each generation finds something new in him. And in the 18th century, who thought, I think, perhaps that Elizabethan tragedy was a little too messy an art form for their sense of order and taste, Nahum Tate provided a King Lear by Shakespeare, in which the old king survived to see Cordelia happily married to Edgar. And they lived happily ever after, right through the 18th century. The greatest English actor of that time was David Garrick, great tragedian, great comedian. He played Nahum Tate's version of King Lear. He was the actor-manager who brought professional actors back to Stratford-upon-Avon when he had the first festival there in 1764. And his biographer records for us that, happily for the lovers of Shakespeare, Mr. Garrick restored Macbeth to us in almost the same dress it was left us by the author. A speech or two which were not conducive to the action he threw out. Scenes that were too long he judiciously pruned. Very few additions were made. Although he did compose a pretty long speech for Macbeth when dying, but Mr. Garrick excelled in the convulsive throes and dying agonies and would lose no opportunity to express that skill in that part of his profession. "'Tis done! The scene of life will quickly close. Ambition's vain, delusive dreams are fled. And now I wake to darkness, guilt, and horror. I cannot bear it, let me shake it off. It will not be, my soul is clogged with blood and cannot rise. I dare not ask for mercy. Hell drags me down." I sink. I sink. Oh, my soul's lost forever. Alas, poor Garrick. The 20th century, of course, has continued to use or abuse Shakespeare for its own purposes. Edward Bond wrote his version of Lear, Bertolt Brecht his of Coriolanus, so did John Osborne, and where would Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern be without Shakespeare's Hamlet? But that's okay with me, because, you know, Shakespeare in his own turn had borrowed, is that the polite word, other people's plots for his own. You know, there'd been the King Lear before he wrote his. There'd been a Hamlet play and a play about King Henry V. The 20th century's great contribution to this sort of Shakespeareana has been the Shakespearean musical. West Side Story is really Romeo and Juliet. Kiss Me Kate is Taming of the Shrew. Catch My Soul is Othello. Boys from Syracuse is Comedy of Errors. Two Gentlemen of Verona is Two Gentlemen of Verona. Opera too, Otello, Falstaff, Midsummer Night's Dream. And ballet, Romeo and Juliet, and even Hamlet. When Robert Helpmann was preparing his ballet of Hamlet, he met another giant of the theatre, Donald Wolfett, who was the last of the great actor-managers who used to tour Britain, acting Shakespeare in large theatres, large voice, large gesture, you know, sawing the air too much with his hand, perhaps thus. And Donald Wolfett met Robert Helpmann in, let us say, the Garrick Club in London and asked him,
"What are you working at, Bobby, old boy?"
"Oh, I'm rehearsing my ballet of Hamlet, Donald."
"You are going to dance, Hamlet?"
"Why not, Donald? You've been singing it for years." No, don't stop. There's another story from the Garrick Club of an actor recently preparing his own King Lear and asking Sir John Gielgud had he got any tips on playing the part.
"Yes," said Gielgud, "get a small Cordelia." Ho, ho, ho.
What is it, you suppose, which connects Richard Burbage, David Garrick, Donald Wolfett, John Gielgud, and other actors like me who managed to earn a living by acting in Shakespeare's plays? I think it's an undying affection and belief that Shakespeare, more than any other writer who ever lived, understood the complexities of human life, the variety of human beings, and the subtleties that go to make up our existence. And for me, those complexities cannot be expressed by the actor unless he has fully understood them in the verse in which they are expressed on the page. And I thought I'd like to let you into a few of the secrets which I unlocked when I was preparing Macbeth. And I want to take a speech which is now famous. But let me first read it in perhaps the accent it was first pronounced for the very first audience who ever heard it in Elizabethan England. Accents, like clothes, have fashions, and sounds change. It may have sounded something like this. "She should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his oar upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing." But we can't... Oh, please. Each speech must be put in the context not only of the scene, but in the context of the whole play. So young Macbeth arrives back from battle, having single-handedly almost saved Scotland from defeat, and like many another successful general, wants to go into professional politics. He meets three witches who promise him that he can be king of Scotland if only he will kill the present king, Duncan, the good old man, his patron and friend, and urged on by his wife, he commits the murder, and then there starts the reign of terror, which sends good men into exile. And at this point, at the end of the play, the good men are returning with troops to surround Macbeth, besieged in his castle where he is bereft of friends and troops. And at this point, a lone supporter arrives to give him the news that the Queen, my lord, is dead. And the simplicity of those monosyllables is carried on in the speech which follows. There is not, I think, in this speech a single word that a child of 5, knowing English, couldn't understand. Macbeth says she should have died hereafter. She had to die sometime. And at that point in the little theatre where we first did Macbeth, the other actor would leave the stage, leaving the bare wooden platform such as this, for me to communicate directly with the audience who were around it as you are now. And I fixed someone in the audience with my eye and said, there would have been a time for such a word. There would have been a time. The whole speech is about time, Macbeth's position in time, and indeed our position too. There would have been a time for such a word. What word? Is that word searching back to the Queen, dead, died, hereafter? No, I think it's leading on with the tripping of the rhythm of the line. There would have been a time for such a word, like the ticking of a clock, leads on to the next word, which is tomorrow. And immediately the vowels lengthen and the rhythm slows up. And tomorrow, as the repetition of the future, as a bleak desert of repetitions. And tomorrow. You know, if you say a word often enough, tomorrow, 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 what does the word mean? Tomorrow, tomorrow. It has no meaning, as life is beginning to lose its meaning for Macbeth. Creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Today, we've had tomorrow, we've got today. 2 elements of time. And here's the first image, the first metaphor of the speech, creeps in this petty pace from day to day. That's how the future is proceeding as far as Macbeth can see. It's the picture here, what, of someone creeping, not with a grandiloquent stride, but a little petty pace along an Elizabethan street. There's something mean about it, as there is something mean about life for Macbeth. How long does this go on? It goes on to the last syllable of recorded time. That's how far the tomorrows are going to stretch. Not to the last word, but to the last syllable of the last word, when the big bang comes and the world ends and all the clocks stop and time is no longer recorded. What records time? Clocks and bells, syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays. We've had tomorrow, we've had today, we've now got yesterday. It's the full complex of time. And Macbeth is in that time. Not only he is, but we are, all our yesterdays. You're beginning to being drawn into Macbeth's predicament. He's willing you into it by referring to you. And what have all our collective experience done? What's the whole of human experience been about? It has lighted fools the way to dusty death. That's what all of our common experience has been about. Holding up a light, a lantern, a candle to light fools who are going along with petty pace, village idiots, those sort of fools who tumble into the dust of the unmade road of Elizabethan England. Fool, of course, has another meaning, professional entertainer, festi, King Lear's fool. Professional stage will be important in a minute, I think, in the speech. Out, out, brief candle. Try and put a candle out. 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 You have to do it twice, don't you? Brief candle. Life isn't some wonderful Roman candle. It's not something casting incandescence throughout the universe. It's a brief candle. It's a penny candle. It's the thing you keep in the kitchen drawer for emergencies. The cheapest thing in your house. Macbeth is saying that's what life is like, and that candle has even gone out. Life, he says, is but a walking shadow. It's not even the candle. It's not even, it has no substance. It's a shadow. There's a phrase in the theatre, walking gentleman. He's the meanest member of any company. He plays any old part and gets paid the least amount of money. Life isn't even a walking gentleman. He's a walking shadow. And yes, Macbeth is thinking of actors because his next phrase is a poor player. Life is a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. What life is like? An actor, says Macbeth, being played by McKellen, who is an actor. Life is like me, that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, which is what I've been doing all evening during acting Shakespeare, and then is heard no more when I go behind the curtain and am never seen again. I vanish from your sight. I've been strutting and fretting. What a way to earn a living, Macbeth is saying. How despicable acting is. And McKellen, who's an actor, is saying that even as he is Macbeth. And if Macbeth thinks that McKellen is wasting his time being an actor, what the hell do you think you're doing watching me? And it's in that way that Shakespeare and Macbeth bring you in to the present tense and don't allow you to think of Macbeth as just a fairy story, something that doesn't really belong to you, because it is McKellen's predicament and therefore yours, because we are bound together, audience and actor, on a stage. Life is a tale, a fairy tale, Arabian Nights tale. No. It's a tale told by an idiot. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow, says the village idiot going along the little country lane with petty pace. Tomorrow, 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 full of sound and fury, signifying the blackest, blankest word in the English language, conveying the total emptiness of Macbeth's vision and Macbeth's future and Macbeth's hope. Nothing. There is no more pessimistic view of human life than Macbeth has reached at that point in the play. And me playing Macbeth, it's not enough for me to come out with some generalized despair. It must be as particular as that analysis which I've just given you. Not so that I can give a university lecture when I'm acting the part, but so that during rehearsal and in the performance, containing all those ideas in my head, I can filter them through the rest of an actor's accoutrements, my hands, my arms, my legs, my body, my face, my voice. And like a pianist who appears not only to be putting the music into the piano, but also taking it out, I am not only Macbeth, I am in a sense the man who wrote Macbeth. And it's my privilege in acting Shakespeare for occasionally to understand what it's like to have been Shakespeare. And now, with your help in imagination, let me put Macbeth's last soliloquy up against others that he has in the play, put it into the context of Macbeth returning from battle, the golden boy, and from that height of ecstasy and achievement and optimism, he falls deeper and deeper and deeper. Always his imagination alive, always thinking and wondering the pros and cons, the rights and wrongs. Macbeth's tragedy is that he is a murderer with a conscience. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why has it given me earnest of success, commencing in a truth? If good, why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature? Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. My thought, whose murder yet is but fantastical, shakes so my single state of mind that function is smothered in some eyes, and nothing is but what is not. If chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir. Come what, come may, time and the hour runs through the roughest day. If it were done when 'tis done, then 'twere well it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his surcease success, that but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all here, but here, upon this bank and shoal of time, we jump the life to come. But in these cases we still have judgment here, that we but teach bloody instruction, which being taught returns to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He's here in double trust, first as I am his kinsman and his subject, strong both against the deed, then as his host. who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of his taking off, and pity, like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubim horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, will blow the horrid deed in every eye, the tears will drown the wind. I have no spur to prick the side of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. Is this a dagger? Which I see before me. The handle toward my hand. Come, let me clutch thee. I have thee not. And yet I see thee still. Art thou not fatal vision, sensible to feeling as to sight, or art thou but a dagger of the mind, a false creation proceeding from the heat oppressed brain? I see thee still in form as palpable as this which now I draw. Thou marshalst me the way that I was going, and such an instrument I was to use. Mine eyes are made the fools of the other senses. Or else worth all the rest. I see thee still, and on thy blade and dudgeon gouts of blood, which was not so before. There's no such thing. It is the bloody business which informs thus to mine eyes. Now, o'er the one half world, nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep. Witchcraft celebrates pale Hecate's offerings, and withered murder, alarmed by his sentinel the wolf, whose howls his watch thus with his stealthy pace. The Tarquin's ravishing strides toward his design moves like a ghost. Thou sure and firm set earth, hear not my steps, which way they walk, for fear thy very stones prate of my whereabouts, and take this present horror from the time which now suits with it. Whilst I threat, he lives, words to the heat of deeds too cold breath gives. I go, and it is done. The bell invites me. Hear it not, Duncan, for 'tis a knell that summons thee to heaven or to hell. We have scotched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself, whilst our poor Malice remains in danger of her former tooth. But let the frame of things disjoint, and both the worlds suffer, ere we will eat our meal in fear, and sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. Better be with the dead, whom we to gain our peace have sent to peace, than on the torture of the mind to lie in restless ecstasy. Duncan is in his grave after life's fitful fever. He sleeps well. Nor steel, nor poison, malice domestic, foreign levy, nothing could touch him further. I have almost forgot the taste of fears. The time has been my senses would have cooled to hear a night shriek, and my fell of hair would at a dismal treatise rouse and stir as life were in it. I've supped full with horrors, direness familiar to my slaughterous thoughts, cannot once start me. Wherefore was that cry? The Queen, my lord, is dead. She should have died hereafter.
there would have been a time for such a word, tomorrow. And tomorrow. And tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow. A poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Our revels now are ended. These actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are vanished into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yeah, all which it inherits shall dissolve, and like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep